In today's video, we're going to talk about Pi-hole, a piece of software for blocking ads and malware and other unwanted content on a network-wide basis. Now, you can, of course, use an ad blocker in your browser, and that will give you blocking in that specific browser on that specific device. But if you want something that's a bit more of a blanket coverage across your network, maybe to take in your IoT devices, things like a smart TV, then Pi-hole is the perfect app for you. Despite its name, Pi-hole doesn't only run on the Raspberry Pi. You can run it anywhere you can run Linux. It is the perfect use case for a very old machine or for a single board computer. So today I'll be using the Cardass Vim 1S, which is a single board computer I recently received and recently reviewed. Check my video here for that. This is a board with 2 GB of RAM and 16 GB of built-in storage. Absolutely perfect, more than enough in fact, for Pi-hole. So let's dive into the installation. I've already installed Ubuntu on my Vim 1S, and I'll be doing the installation process connected via SSH. You can, of course, connect a monitor and a keyboard and do it that way. The installation is pretty simple. Come to the Pi-hole website, click on the install button. I will link all this in the description below, and you can copy this command here and paste it into your terminal. Now, if you're not comfortable with this one-step installer where basically you're downloading a script and piping it straight into Bash, which is a known security issue in many cases, then there are other more manual steps that I'll link as well. I've done this before. This is a trusted website for me. I have no issue with this approach, but you should make your own security decisions. So I'm going to copy this anyway and go into my terminal, and I'm connected to my Vim 1S already, and I'm going to paste this in and press enter to run it. You're prompted for your sudo password. So for me, that's Cardass. And then the installation script is going to update the catalog of packages on your machine to make sure it's up to date, and then we'll go through the wizard. So you get this little warning to say that this installer will transform your device into a network-wide ad blocker. So press OK. If you find Pi-hole useful and you want to make a donation, please do. It's a great project. Press OK. Pi-hole is a server, so it needs a static IP address. There are many different ways of achieving this. You can either configure the machine directly or you can configure it in your router. I'm going to configure it in the router, so we'll do that shortly. I'm going to press continue. Now, the color scheme here is a little bit weird, so you can't really see, but this is showing all of my network interfaces. I'm going to use ETH0, so my wired Ethernet connection. I do recommend using Ethernet for this. You can use wireless if you have to, but don't forget that all of your devices are going to be using this Pi-hole machine to find out where websites are. So you need a very reliable connection. Wired is definitely best. Press select. You can choose the upstream provider. I'm just going to choose Cloudflare for now, but I am going to change that later on to something a little bit different. Press OK. You need to bring in third-party ad lists into Pi-hole to actually make it do anything. Kind of built in, it's got no blocking. It just blocks what the lists say. I recommend using the default list, and we'll add some more later to make the blocking even more comprehensive. You can choose not to install the admin website, and then you can use the command line for administration. I really like the admin web interface. It makes it easy to do a few different things, but also you get really nice reports. So I'm going to install that. So you have to install a web server for the admin web interface to work. You can choose to install the default one or customize it yourself. If you're just building a single purpose Pi-hole machine, I recommend using the default, which is what I'm going to do. Do you want to enable query logging? I definitely do, because I want to see which queries are being missed. So, you know, if I'm hitting a website that I think should be blocked, I can see that in the log. So I press yes. You get to choose the privacy mode. So this is kind of how much information is logged. Do you want to show everything in the logs, which is 0, hide the domains and clients, or choose anonymous mode? Since this is a private device on my network and only I get to see it, or only I and my family get to see it, I'm going to choose show everything. That gives me the most data to refine my blocking. You can change this later, so don't worry if you get it wrong. Press continue. The installation process does take a few minutes and will be faster on certain machines and slower on other machines. Regardless, it does take a little bit of time, so now's a perfect time to grab a coffee or a break. At the end of the installation, you'll be shown this kind of summary page that tells you what the IP address of the machine is, but also what the admin login password is. So make sure you keep track of that, and then press OK. And just in case you didn't get the admin password, it is actually shown here in the output of the installation process, and you can copy and paste it somewhere safe. So at this point, you have a working Pi-hole and you now need to integrate it into your network. And I like to do this in stages. And it's important to kind of understand how Pi-hole works. The way it does its blocking is when you make a web request to a certain website, say google.com, you have to resolve that name, google.com, into an IP address. And Pi-hole acts as a DNS server, a resolver for those names. DNS is domain name service. And it blocks by returning an empty address for the domains it wants to block. And you can do this progressively, so we can test from this machine first that it's even working. Then we can make just this machine use Pi-hole for blocking, and then we can make our entire network use Pi-hole for blocking. And I think when you're getting started, that's a nice way to roll this out. So the first thing to do is, in this screen here, we can just run a quick test using the dig command, which is a way to look up domain names. So I'm going to use dig @ and then 127.0.0.1, which I want to use the local machine as the DNS service. And let's just look up youtube.com. So that tells me that the domain name server on this Pi-hole is working, and it's giving me this IP address for youtube.com. Now I want to make my Mac use this Pi-hole as the domain name server. So the way to do that is to come into System Preferences, come to Network, and in whichever connection you're connected to, I've got connected to Wi-Fi here, so I'll come to Advanced, come to DNS. These are my default DNS servers. This here is my current Pi-hole, so not the one I'm reinstalling right now, my other Pi-hole. And I'm just going to press plus here. That wipes out the default settings. I'm going to replace it with 192.168.1.75, which is the IP of my new Pi-hole, and I can check that with IPA. And if I come to where ETH0 is here, I can see that that's the IP address. If you're on Windows or you're on Linux, then the process for setting a DNS server for your device will be different, but the premise is the same. Find your network connection, find the DNS settings, and then override them with the IP address of your Pi-hole. And of course, it's very likely that the IP address of your Pi-hole will be different than the IP address I have here. So now that my Mac is plugged into the new Pi-hole, it's time to test the ad blocking. And the easiest way to do that is to come to the browser. So back in my browser here, let's just close that down. I'm going to come to do a search for something I want to buy. So I actually have been looking at buying a Yeti cooler. And you can see all these little ads here from Google. And if I press on one of them, it's blocked. And what's happening here is that this domain name, googleadservices.com, is being blocked by the Pi-hole. And in fact, if we just take the domain name, copy it to our clipboard, and come back to the command line here and do the same thing with dig. So dig at 127.0.0.1, and this time googleadservices.com. You can see it's returning this 000. That's the empty domain. So it's basically saying there's nothing here. And that's essentially how the blocking works. Once you're happy that your device is working and you want to roll this out to your network, it's time to undo what we just did. So now we want that default domain name server to be the Pi-hole. The exact steps needed to do this will differ based on your router model, but the premise will probably be the same. It's most likely that your network is configured to hand out a particular DNS server to all of your devices using something called DHCP. And what you can do is tell your router to hand out a different DNS server via DHCP, which is what we're going to do now. I will show you how this works on my router, which is a UniFi setup. It will be different for your router, but you're doing the same process just with a different UI. So here I am in my default network on UniFi, and if I come down to the advanced configuration section of my DHCP setup, you can see here it says DHCP DNS servers. And what I will do is change this 222, my current Pi-hole server, to 175, my new Pi-hole server. I'm not going to save that here because I'm going to ruin everything for everybody in my house. I've already got like a complex Pi-hole setup, but that's what you would do. You can configure these fallback servers if you want, and this can be quite handy as a rollout step if you're not completely certain that your Pi-hole install is going to be very robust. I would normally get rid of these, but I've been testing a new Pi-hole recently, so I put them back in. So again, I'm not constantly getting calls for tech support from the family. While you're in the configuration for your router, it can also make sense to configure the static IP address for your device. Again, this will differ based on your router model, but let me show you how I do it in UniFi. So the nice thing with UniFi is I can come to the list of client devices. I can type in the IP address of the Pi-hole, press on it, come to settings, and then tap fixed IP here. So I'm going to do that now. And this will reserve that IP address for this device in my DHCP setup. So each time I connect this device, it's always going to get that IP address. Now you can absolutely set a fixed IP address directly inside Ubuntu, but you're going to find that the way you do that differs on every different operating system. So I really like to assign all my fixed IPs in my router because then it's the same regardless of what device I'm using. Your mileage may vary. I'm going to apply the change for that. So now that we've set the device up network-wide, we would go back to our settings in System Preferences, come back into the network here, come to Advanced, come to DNS, and basically undo this. You can press minus here to get rid of that. Remember that I haven't applied this Pi-hole on my network yet, so I'm just going to leave this in place for the video, but that's what you would do to roll this out everywhere. So now you've got a fully working Pi-hole. It's been given its fixed IP address. It's been applied as the network-wide DNS server, and you could absolutely stop here. You've got the default blocking list, so you're already getting some content and ad blocking. And I do recommend that maybe for a week or so that you just leave the default configuration in place while you get used to what the Pi-hole does to your network traffic. But after you've had it in place for a little while, you'll almost certainly want to tweak the blocking. And you'll almost certainly find that there are a few little issues with browsers like Chrome, and certainly issues for day-to-day browsing for certain people on your network. So let's take a look now at how we add additional blocking. Then we'll take a look at how we remove blocking. And then we'll take a look at how we fix this issue with Chrome. So to add new block lists, you first have to come to the admin panel. So to do this, I'm going to type in the IP address of my new Pi-hole, which is that. And you get a link here to go to the admin panel. Remember, we've got to type in the password, which I saved to my clipboard. So press login. And the moment you log in, you start to see actually already on just this one device that's using this Pi-hole, I've had 79 queries, 4 of them have been blocked, and I've blocked about 5% of the queries. And this is how many domains I have on the ad list, 138,289. And I want to add more lists to that. The first question is, where do you get the lists from? Well, there's a website called firebog.net that collates like well-approved lists. So if you come to firebog.net, the big block list collection, you can see there's a huge set of lists here. The ones with ticks are pretty safe to use. They're not going to disrupt your browsing experience too much. The other ones, your mileage may vary. They may have blocks that break certain websites, that break certain apps. I've been using day to day the full set of approved lists, and I don't have too many issues. To get them as an easily copy and pastable format, you can come to this link here. The CSV version's found here. And I just choose ticked lists. And this is all the lists that I'm running. So you can just copy that entire thing, come back to your Pi-hole. In the side menu here, let me just make that a little bit bigger. In the side menu here, it says add lists. And you can just paste them into this address bar here. Press add. And it's successfully added all of those lists. Close that down. Now you can see that all those lists are in there. But what you'll notice is that it doesn't actually apply immediately. And you need to run this command, Pi-hole-G, to update the database internal to Pi-hole to reflect the content of those lists. So let's come back to our terminal, clear the screen a little bit, and we'll run Pi-hole-G. Type in our password again. This doesn't take too long. Okay, so with that done, if you come back to the admin console, you'll see that it actually doesn't update the number of domains in the ad list. I found that I have to restart a few more things for this number to be updated. So to do that, just come to settings, scroll down, and then click restart DNS resolver. Yes, restart DNS. And then come to dashboard, and you'll now see it reflects a new number. So just over 400,000 different domains being blocked. If you think about that, that's quite a lot of network traffic being wasted on things you don't actually want to see on your network. So the very first thing that happened to me after deploying Pi-hole on my network is that my wife complained that websites she wanted to access were no longer accessible. And let me show you specifically the use case that we had, which is if I come to Google again and search for my Yeti cooler, she wanted to click on these ads. Now, I don't want to click on them. And of course, if she clicks on them, they're going to be blocked. So how do you unblock either one domain or many domains on a per device basis? Well, the easiest way, I think, is if you have certain people who don't want to have blocking at all, you can just disable the Pi-hole for them completely. Let me show you how that works. So come back to the dashboard and then click groups in the side menu. And I'm going to create a group here for no blocking. And I'm going to press add. So that's amazing, no blocking. And now what I want to do is come to clients. I'm just going to find this machine. So I'm going to come to the known clients here, and I'm 192.168.1.125. That's me here on this laptop. I'm going to press add. So now I've got a specific pullout of this client, and I'm going to say that's Rob's laptop. And the default assignment is I'm added to the default group. What I want to do is add myself to the no blocking group and remove myself from the default group. So press apply. So now this laptop is going to have no ad blocking applied to it. And if I come back to my search results here and now try to press on the ad, it brings up the Yeti cooler that I might want to buy. So this is a fairly extreme way of allowing just one or maybe a small handful of domains to be seen by a particular device, because I've now opened up the entire world again for that device. And I'll show you what I mean. So if I come back in here, I can obviously click on the Yeti link and see the ads. But if I also come to the independent website, I'm getting these ads in this little box here, but I'm not able to block them because I've basically opened up the world for this device. What I want to do is allow just the Google URL and block everything else. And the best way to do that is to create a dedicated group for this machine, block everything, and then allow just a few things. So I'll show you how I do that. So first of all, come back into groups. Make sure you've got your non-blocking group here. And then in ad lists, you want to choose for every list which group it applies to. I'm just going to choose one or two for now, but you can obviously go through and do them all by hand. So I did these two block lists in here. And now I'd expect that the independent ads will be blocked because they're blocked by this list here. So if I come back here and press refresh, they're not blocked. Now this will drive you mad if you don't know what's going on here. the browser has cached the result of the DNS lookup here. So it's not even asking the Pi-hole for the domain name for these ads. To check that you really have got this right, open up a privacy window, visit the website in question, do all of the gubbins that we have to do, and we'll see that no ads appear. So a fresh session will now be talking to the Pi-hole. You're not seeing the caching of the browser. So we've re-enabled the blocking on the independent ads, but have we also preserved the not blocking of the Yeti ads? Well, let's see. If we come to Yeti Cooler in this privacy window to make sure we're getting no DNS caching from the browser and click on one of these ads, we can see that we've blocked that again. We now need to enable just that URL. So come back. What I want to do is just hover over this and see that in this case, it's adtmt.com. So I'm just going to take adtmt.com. Come back to my control panel, come to domains. Under domain to be added, I'm going to paste that one in. And you almost certainly want to choose add domain as wildcard because you want all of the subdomains as well, things like www. and so forth. So press that and then choose add to whitelist. So this will allow this domain to be let through. Now, this is doing in the default group. I actually want this in the non-blocking group. So I'm just going to choose just that group, press apply. So now I'm allowing adtmt.com for devices in the no blocking group. I also happen to know that some of the Google ads come up under another domain, googleadservices.com. So I've added that to my whitelist as well, making sure it's in the no blocking group and not the default group. So press apply. And then if I open up a new privacy window, come to the independent website, see that the ads are still blocked, but open up the Yeti Cooler search, press accept, and then click on this here and see that we're able to get through to the search results. Now, one thing you can try is leaving everything blocked in the default group and selectively adding your clients to another group that only has the allow list or the whitelist. I've had mixed results with that. Sometimes it seems to work and sometimes it doesn't. I think there's an ordering issue. So I much prefer creating these discrete groups where I can assign each client to just one group and make sure that that's the experience they get. Let's now turn our attention to Chrome. And the issue with Chrome is that in many cases, it can bypass your Pi-hole. Let me just show you what I mean. So here I am in Safari and I've got the independent website open and none of the ads are showing. If I come to Chrome, and let's just open a privacy window to make sure we don't get any caching, go through the jump here, and I get an ad. It's the same machine, same DNS configuration. Chrome shows the ad, Safari doesn't. So what's happening here? Well, the issue here is that Chrome, where it can, will not use traditional DNS. It will use something called DNS over HTTPS, which is a much more secure, much more privacy-preserving protocol than basic DNS, but it has the downside that your Pi-hole can't intercept it. When Chrome does this depends on how you've configured DNS for your machine. If the only DNS server given to your machine is your Pi-hole, Chrome will not use DNS over HTTPS, so it will absolutely honor the Pi-hole settings. If you have set up multiple DNS servers and one of them can support DNS over HTTPS, then Chrome will probably use that one and will bypass your Pi-hole completely. Obviously, the easiest solution here is to only have one DNS server and have that be your Pi-hole, but if you do want to have a fallback, but you don't want Chrome to use HTTPS DNS, then you can turn it off. So come into settings, come to privacy and security, scroll all the way down, come to security, come all the way down and just disable use secure DNS. So with secure DNS disabled, if I open up another privacy window in Chrome and come to independent.co.uk, press agree, and you'll see no ad appears. Now, you might think, well, that's great, but do I really want to disable secure DNS? And the answer is probably not. It is a worthwhile feature, even though it has this downside, but you can replace it with network-wide secure DNS using another piece of software called Unbound. Let's see how to do that. So for this, I want to refer to this amazing guide from Barton Bytes, which is really, really useful. I will link this below, but it's a really simple process. We're going to first of all install these two packages on our Pi-hole server. So sudo apt install -y for yes, Unbound, and DNS utils. Type in the password. So you'll probably see that it says status failure. Don't worry about that. That's because there are now two DNS servers on this machine and they're trying to share the same port. We're going to fix that. And we're going to fix that by taking the config that this website recommends. So we'll use sudo wget and we're going to put it in the right place. So let's run that command and it will fail, at least on my Ubuntu, the version of Ubuntu that I'm on, because this folder does not exist. And it is in fact, rather than just conf.d, it is unbound.conf.d. So run that. Now we have the right config file in place. We can restart Unbound and it should start successfully this time. So sudo systemctl restart Unbound. Great. And if we just check the status, you can see it's now running. That's perfect. You might also want to make sure it starts up automatically. So we'll do enable Unbound as well, sudo systemctl enable Unbound. So now it will start when the Pi-hole starts. Using dig, we can check that this is actually working. So 127001 again, and we want .1, check google.com. But this time we want to make sure we use the port that we've assigned to Unbound, which is 5533. That's in the config file we downloaded. So that's actually working. Now we need to tell Pi-hole to use this Unbound server for all of its outbound DNS. Really simple. Come to the admin console, come to settings, come to DNS, and disable what you selected, whatever you selected in the wizard before we reflected here. So I selected Cloudflare. So I'm going to disable those two. And then scroll down here and it says custom one. So I'm going to do 127001. And then you've got to do a hash. And then the port number is 5533. Tick that and press save all the way at the bottom. And you can just check that that's still working by coming back here, getting rid of the P. Let's choose something new. Let's check like youtube.com. And you can see it's now working. So now what I've got is all the devices in my network talking to the Pi-hole, and I've even disabled the secure DNS in Chrome, so it's picking up the Pi-hole. And the Pi-hole is doing its onward DNS requests using the secure protocol rather than the insecure traditional DNS. So there we go. That's how to install Pi-hole, how to configure custom blocking lists, how to make sure things like Chrome work, how to opt out for certain devices for the blocking behavior, and generally just to improve your network experience. I do think that Pi-hole is an excellent addition to any network. It can run on any old computer, takes maybe 30 minutes of just concerted effort to get it installed, get it all configured correctly, get it in your router, get the blocking as you want it, and then you're going to have a much faster internet experience at home because you're downloading much less content, and the content you are downloading isn't decorated with ads and malware and other annoying things. I hope you found this video useful. If so, please hit like, please hit subscribe, maybe hit the bell as well, so you don't miss out on any future content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.